I'm Briana, 38 years old, and 3 weeks ago at my father's funeral, my brother stood in front of 40 grieving relatives and casually announced that he was selling our family home to pay off his gambling debts. My mother nodded beside him and said, "Your dad would understand. Your sister can find another place." In that moment, surrounded by people who wouldn't meet my eyes, I felt erased. What none of them knew was that my father had spent 15 years preparing for exactly this scenario. To understand how it all unraveled, you need to know what my family was like. Growing up in suburban Philadelphia, I was the daughter who was expected to marry well and leave, while my older brother Marcus was treated like an investment. When I was accepted to college, my parents refused to help financially. "You're a girl," my mother said. "You'll have a husband to provide." Meanwhile, Marcus had his tuition, apartment, and car fully funded. I worked 2 jobs, earned scholarships, graduated with honors, and built a career as a CPA on sheer exhaustion and stubbornness. For 2 years after graduation, I barely spoke to my family. The favoritism had hollowed something out inside me. Then, 3 weeks ago, my mother called at 2 a.m. My father had collapsed. By the time I reached the hospital, he was gone. At the funeral, Marcus performed grief beautifully in a designer suit, speaking about a bond with Dad I'd never witnessed. After the service, he returned to the podium and announced the house would be sold. He claimed we had all agreed. I hadn't even been asked. My mother added that I was independent and didn't need the house the way Marcus did. The implication was clear. I was disposable. Days later, at a family meeting, they pushed a document in front of me, a disclaimer of interest in the estate. They wanted me to sign away any claim to the house so the sale could proceed quickly. When I hesitated, they threatened to tell everyone how I'd abandoned the family years earlier. I drove home shaken but not convinced. The night before, while sorting through Dad's old office, I had found something. Paperwork for an LLC called Farwell Family Holdings, dated 2009, bearing my signature from when I was 23. I barely remembered signing it. Trusting my instincts, I called my father's estate attorney, Gerald Whitmore. What he told me changed everything. In 2009, my father had transferred the Maple Street house into that LLC. The sole member, the legal owner, was me. He had done it quietly, legally, meticulously, because he had begun noticing Marcus's gambling even back then. Dad loved him, but he didn't trust him. He believed that if anything happened to him, Marcus would drain every asset. So he protected the house by placing it beyond my mother's and brother's reach. The structure had been maintained for 15 years, fees paid, documents notarized, filings updated annually. It was airtight. My father, who had rarely defended me out loud, had defended me in the language he understood best: paperwork. At the formal will reading, my family gathered expecting my surrender. The will distributed small assets, Dad's car to Marcus, savings to my mother, but when the house came up, Whitmore calmly explained it was not part of the estate. It belonged to the LLC, and I owned the LLC. The room went silent before exploding. Marcus accused me of manipulation. My mother looked betrayed, but the documents were undeniable, and my father had executed them when he was healthy and fully competent. When pressed, I revealed the real reason for the urgency. Marcus owed over $300,000 in gambling debts to dangerous people. My mother had already drained her savings trying to save him. The house was their last resort. I stood there, heart pounding, and for the first time in my life, did not shrink. I said I wasn't there for revenge. I was there to honor my father's choice. I offered my mother a lease. She could stay in the house for $1 a month, but Marcus could not live there. If he wanted help, it would be rehab, not cash. My grandmother later pulled me aside and confessed she had known about the LLC. Dad had asked for her blessing months before he died. "Protect her," he'd said, and she had agreed. Outside, Marcus approached me without the bravado, terrified and shaking, admitting the threats were real. I told him treatment was the only path I'd support. He eventually checked himself into a 90-day program. My mother, stripped of certainty, asked whether Dad had left her any message. He hadn't, not in writing. I moved back into the house part-time, repainted my childhood bedroom, and reclaimed the space that had been reduced to Marcus's storage unit. The keys felt heavier than brass. They carried proof that my father had seen me all along. In a letter he left with the attorney, he admitted he hadn't been brave enough to defend me openly, but trusted me with what mattered. For years, I mistook his silence for indifference. Now, I understand it differently. He was a man raised to hide emotion, so he expressed love through preparation, through safeguards, through quiet strategy. The house was never just property, it was his apology, his acknowledgement, his belief that I would protect what he built. Our family isn't magically healed. My mother and I are learning how to coexist without the old script. Marcus is still in recovery. Some relatives still whisper that I manipulated the situation, but I know the truth. I didn't steal anything. I accepted what was legally and intentionally given to me. For the first time, I didn't beg to be included. I didn't sign away my worth to keep the peace. I stood still and let the truth speak. And in doing so, I finally understood something that took me nearly 40 years to learn. Being the quiet daughter doesn't mean being invisible, and protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's survival.